Traditionally, social protection has been about giving people safety nets and cash transfers and support for their well-being. In recent years, it's been realized that just by giving people money, food, or assets, in the long run, they were not actually being moved out of poverty.
What else can we do to make sure that cash or that food is used well so that people actually become more resilient and they move on to a trajectory that's positive for their livelihoods out of dependency into independent livelihoods?
This is called graduation, leaving a social protection program after reaching a well-being threshold. That is, once the participant has acquired a set of resources that is expected to equip them for a higher income future livelihood.
Other terms that are used for that more recently are cash plus models. So within a program you might have cash that is given to a household, but you might think, well, actually that's not the magic bullet. We need to also provide some education or some health or maybe some early childhood development or nutrition services that would actually allow people to use that cash in a way that's beneficial for their livelihoods, so they'll move out of poverty.
Rachel Sabates-Wheeler is a research fellow at the Institute of Development Studies in the UK. She's considered a leading expert on graduation from social protection.
And that's in relatively stable settings. But in humanitarian settings, it's a little bit more difficult. So you might have a crisis, a conflict, or an emergency, a tsunami or a drought, and you'll run in with cash or food, but you might not have the services that could complement that. They might have been destroyed because of the emergency. But there is still place to be able to say, actually, we do need to complement this cash with something else. So it might be with some very specific asset. It might be around livestock or around small business development and immunizations or schooling or school feeding. So you might actually put a package of support together that would help people move out of vulnerability and poverty. So that would be within a humanitarian setting, but ideally what you want to do across the nexus of humanitarian development is you want to build from a very low base with no institutions, no support, and up into a stable system where you've got a whole package of complementary programs. So there's a whole range of things that humanitarian efforts can do to support a system, the development of a longer term system, and one of them might be around setting up information systems for households. So when you go and target households or beneficiaries, you actually keep a record that's open for other people, and so we know year on year who is being supported and who's being targeted, and that can provide the basis of an MIS system for a national program. Other things might be around vulnerability analysis. So humanitarians and development workers often go on their own separately to do disaster and mapping or vulnerability analysis, and they don't communicate with each other, but ideally they should do it together, because the vulnerabilities are very overlapping often among development and human. So there's multiple things you can do to align humanitarian development so that the humanitarians are actually feeding into a system. Because what in the past has happened, humanitarians come in for 1 year, they leave like a few months later, and everything gets forgotten. And what you need to do is say, actually, we're going to link this into a system so that it provides the basis for the government.
The process of graduating is complex, requiring tailored interventions, but in the end, not all segments of the population will graduate. People who are old or disabled will always depend on social protection, and we shouldn't expect them to move into livelihoods that we'd consider to be productive. How do we determine who will be able to leave the social protection program and who will continue to need support? How can we target correctly?
For those who can move into those kinds of livelihoods, there will be different packages of support, because not everybody is going to be an entrepreneur and not everybody wants to do the same type of activity. So we might have to recognize that rural populations might have a different type of support, or pastoralists who have livestock will have a different support than someone living in an urban city who wants to just get a job. So there has to be actually some nuance around the kind of support that you give to allow people to become more resilient. So it's about making sure that when you're targeting those, you understand your target group and you understand their needs. So the needs assessment for them is also something that needs to be harmonized across development and humanitarian sector, so that you've got a long run plan. It's not just immediate need. Of course there will be immediate needs, everyone will have food, everyone needs food and they need shelter, but beyond that there needs to be a much more nuanced plan.
The guidance package on social protection across the humanitarian and development nexus is available on EU Learn, DevCo Academy, Capacity for Dev and socialprotection.org.